Bright and sunny Los Angeles is where our journey starts. Busy, traffic-filled lanes of cars cut across the city where its people go about their lives. Conversing, exercising, working, enjoying their busy lives. Back at home, it's time for our main character to wake up. Her clothes are on and her keys are grabbed before she sets off in her car. The never-ending supply of cars on the road tells us everything we need to know about the main mode of transport in this city. A mode of transport our main character hasn't gotten a hand of yet, it seems, as she barely manages to get into her parking spot. At least she got to where she needed to be, right? Her name is Becca, and she just made it to her friend's house. Apparently, her friend Miles has been going through a rough breakup, and she's been summoned to help him through it. Her other friend, Jeremy, has been trying to help, but he desperately needs a break. Becca will be staying with Miles alone all weekend. She makes her way inside, and in contrast to the lively atmosphere of the neighborhood, the inside of Miles' place is dark and forlorn. He's in terrible shape, his room is nearly blacked out with the sheets on his curtains, and he's fast asleep in the middle of the day. She enters his room, and he's only slightly surprised to see her. She doesn't manage to shake him from his post-breakup depression just yet. But judging by her upbeat attitude, she won't let him drag her down to his level either. He tells her the last few months were pretty tough, but she won't have any of his sulking. She rips the curtains off the windows and yells at him to get up. Picking a vitamin gummy up from his bedside table, she takes a seat and tells him he has 10 minutes to get ready. He tells her to piss off, but she's determined. And she knows just what he needs to start his day. She plays a happy oldie on the speaker and proceeds to bounce on his bed in an attempt to rouse him up from his horizontal position. It works, and he's in the shower in no time. She dances around his room happily as he goes through his morning routine. The difference in their mood is almost jarring. When he's ready, they make their way to her car. At least that's what Miles thought. To his surprise, Becca is ready to spend the day traveling by foot. It's unusual, to say the least, to walk in Los Angeles. Nobody walks here, Miles says. But that's exactly why Becca wants to do it. It's only 5 blocks to their destination. He has no choice but to catch up to Becca and join her under the sun's rays. That's when their conversation really starts. Becca asks him about the day they met, the first day of school. They ditched school and went bowling, and she says they're going to recreate that today. She wants to take the day to walk around and talk through their troubles. He's curious as to what could possibly be going wrong in her life, but she wants to talk through his issues first. He tells her the woman he wanted to spend the rest of his life with cheated on him. They were supposed to get married 2 weeks from now, and he has zero clue what to do with his life now. Her worries are nowhere near that level of devastating. She's thinking of moving to New York and opening a community art gallery with her college friend Erin. They want to sell their art and give classes, and the plan has been in the works for a year now. They've even saved up for it. He's quick to stomp on her plans, saying no one spends money on art. And if they do, it's not community art they're spending it on. Her father agrees, she says, but she's still unsure, which is too bad for her, since she needs to decide by tomorrow. They found a gallery willing to let them rent a place, and that's the deadline they set for their down payment. She asks him why he's against the idea. They're not that close, after all. They're just childhood friends who keep in touch and see each other once in a while. He tells her it would be weird having her be so far away. They're now halfway through their walk, and Miles has already had enough of the conversation, and the hot weather, probably. She asks him why he's giving up so early, and he blames it on the rough week. She doesn't care though, and continues in her merry way. With a huff, he joins her for the rest of their trek. She brings up the first day they met again. She tells him they had a great time that day because they decided to have fun in the face of the change that was going to happen. Instead of freaking out about new teachers and classes and friends, they walked around and talked through their thoughts and processed them. They had fun and eased their worries about the future, instead of dwelling on the possible things that could have gone wrong. Today is no different, she says. She wants them to walk and talk through everything that's bothering them, sure that it will help in setting their mind straight. Before he can give in to Becca's persuasion, Miles's mom calls. She tells him she set up a dinner for them tomorrow so they can sit down and sort his situation out. She's mad that the wedding she invested $20,000 into might be canceled, and he's exasperated that her greatest concern is the money and not her son's feelings. He finds himself apologizing for something he had no say in. It's truly disheartening to see how patronizing and unsupportive his mother is. The dinner is settled for tomorrow, despite his protests. Their walk continues, with more problems now piled onto Miles's back. The weight he'll have to carry on this long walk is even heavier now. But for some reason, he's less reluctant than ever to join Becca. Happy to see it, she sets out some ground rules. 1. They do everything the way they did in high school. 2. They can get rides. 3. No cell phones. Now that the rules are set, she asks him if he wants to talk about his situation. He tells her about how she found out his wife, Sam, was cheating. She got home from work one day, and by then, he had already suspected her of reading his diary. She had been distant for a few weeks already. When he confronted her about it, she denied his accusation. But he couldn't get over the invasion of privacy. He trusted her with all his being, but she snooped into his private thoughts and lied about it. When they argued about it, that's when she told him she was cheating. It felt like a dam broke, and all her deepest secrets spilled out. She hated how insecure he was, and she was seeing another man. Becca is surprised, to say the least, but she wants to know how he's sure that he read her diary. He confesses that he only knew because he read her diary too. Not a lot of trust between that couple, clearly. It's a good thing their relationship ended before they got married. They're at their destination now, an outdoor cafe where they order 2 coffees, water, diet soda, a milkshake, and a mimosa. They're all for Miles, save for 1 coffee. They're back to the conversation once they order. Oddly enough, Miles's wife didn't write anything about her affair in her diary. He freaked out when she told him about it. All that he wanted in his life was a genuine relationship like his parents had. A relationship filled with love, respect, and friendship. They never had that, so the only thing he could do is leave. They haven't talked since she broke the news. He tells Becca about the call with his mom. Apparently, apart from his mom and dad, Sam's parents are gonna be there too. The drinks are here, but Miles has to venture into the bathroom quickly. On his way back, he sees a man in a business suit talking to Becca. She's asking him if he wants to pick her up later, at 8 o'clock. They're done with the cafe and are now walking again. Meanwhile, Sam is driving through a neighborhood, leaving a voice message for Miles. She's telling him about how she knows that she messed up, but it's important that they talk. Of course, Sam doesn't have access to his phone right now, so the message is left unheard. Him and Becca are at some weird art gallery right now, and he's blasting some happy tunes through his iPod. As it turns out, this is where Becca works, and she just got into an argument with her boss about her shifts. They talk about the painting in front of Miles, with him theorizing about the meaning behind the piece. He misses the mark by a long shot. The piece is about Sleeping Beauty's castle at Disneyland, but he thought it was a breakup, obviously. They spend the rest of their time with Miles giving his inappropriate interpretations of paintings, much to the annoyance of the older customers there. They're at the Museum of Art now, Becca's favorite place to spend her lunch break. They start talking about art and its subjectivity. She tells him everyone decides for themselves whether they like an art piece or not. On their way out, they're amused by some guy in his car yelling at someone through the phone. Becca says people like that are why she wants to move out of Los Angeles, but Miles thinks he's just a money-hungry transplant. Los Angeles natives are actually cool and down-to-earth. Sam is from Los Angeles, a fact that Becca brings up. She asks him if he's thought about making up with her. Of course he thought about it, but he doesn't know what either of them want. More than anything, he wants to know what he actually wants before listening to her side. It's Becca's turn to receive voice messages now. Her dad is apologizing for yelling at her the last time they spoke. It was just a shock to him when he learned that she might be moving to New York, and he hopes she'll call him back and work through it with him. Miles and Becca have picked up something to smoke. She's worried about how they're smoking in public, but he assures her that trying to be conspicuous is more likely to put them in danger. They set up a plan for the rest of their walk. Becca wants to find the most beautiful thing she's never seen, and Miles will look for the ugliest. They get on a bus. By now, Miles' mood is soaring. The man in front of him farting in his face doesn't even upset him. Instead, they laugh about it. They make up a biography about said man, and Miles taps the man once they make up some basic things about him. The man takes off his headphones, and Miles starts interrogating him. The man is unamused, but Miles gets a good laugh out of it. Miles asks Becca if she's ready to leave Los Angeles and it's wonderful weather for rainy New York. He tells her she needs to be smart about it. She says the only thing holding her back is her dad and her friends. Her dad is worried about how she'll handle it financially. More importantly, she knows he'll be lonely without her, given that her mom passed away. She doesn't want to think about the sorrow she'll put him through if he leaves. Clearly, she hasn't gotten over her mother's passing either, as she gets teary-eyed halfway through their conversation. The conversation is swiftly derailed onto their next topic. Miles announces that he found the ugliest thing he's never seen in Los Angeles. It's a Nickelback concert at the Wiltern. He talks at length about his dissatisfaction with the current state of the Wiltern. Back in his dad's days, all of Hollywood's big names would parade the street and put on fantastic shows. Today's acts couldn't even dream of coming close. They talk about the historic monument that was torn down to make place for a $600 million high school. They're both shocked about the money put into it, given the layoffs that teachers have been facing lately. They make their way down the steps to the high school, and Miles starts talking about his career. He got into law to try and help people, but soon enough, he quit and became a teacher. He might be affected by the next series of layoffs, another worry on his mind. Becca tells him what he's doing is important, and he should be proud of what he does. They walk past a trio of teenagers who throw insults at Miles's way. Becca talks back at them, but Miles doesn't seem the least bit bothered. I guess being a teacher hardened him to any possible mockery they could throw his way. Becca tells him he has to pick something that's uglier than Nickelback at Wiltern. Miles agrees to her challenge. They're at Wilshire Boulevard now, and Miles is talking about the history of the place. He's wondering if the current residents care about what went down there before. Becca tells him they're probably more worried about rent and putting food on their table. Clearly, Miles cares way more about history than Becca does. She consoles him with a hug, telling him it was special that his dad taught him about history as he was growing up. They enter the metro, and Miles sees that someone named Eric is calling Becca. She keeps to her promise about not using her phone. She's been seeing Eric for a while, and despite her being non-committal and at times flaky, he's a nice and patient guy. Miles is happy that she's met someone decent. Their friendship is clearly built on a foundation of support and encouragement. She tells him timing is the most important thing in life. Miles brings up Jeremy, the guy we saw outside of Miles' house at the beginning of the film. Apparently, he's Becca's ex, and that was the first time she saw him in a while. Jeremy still talks about her, and it's clear that he misses her in some capacity, given that he invited her to hang out sometime earlier this morning. But she's not interested. Apparently, he cheated on her multiple times. The first time he did it, she pretended it never happened. The second time, she dumped him and immediately hooked up with another man to forget all about him. What's shocking is that Miles was the one who informed Becca about the affair, a fact that Jeremy doesn't know. The train they've been waiting for is finally here, and Becca greets it with open arms, literally. Miles asks her if there are any other guys, apart from Eric, that she has her eye on. She says she's not looking for someone. And when she does look, she's super picky. She doesn't want to get into a relationship out of convenience or loneliness. More importantly, she doesn't have time for it. She's juggling her potential move to New York, her father's disapproval, and her mom's passing right now. She can't have someone to take care of on top of that. Miles tells her a relationship isn't supposed to be her taking care of someone. It's supposed to be two people taking care of each other. They laugh at the irony of him giving relationship advice. She tells him not to get back together with Sam solely out of loneliness. As she gives him the advice, an intoxicated man strolls up to her and tells her aura is off. His advice is to eat more beets because they're magical. Miles' aura is fine, thankfully. They're off the train now, headed to an important destination, a beet store. On their way, Miles spills out some of his emotional burden. He thought he'd spend the rest of his life with Sam. And though he knows she's not the only fish in the sea, it's hard to find who will match with him like Sam did. She was cool and smart. She made him laugh, but he doesn't know if he still trusts her. He regrets reading her diary. She always treated him right, but Becca says he deserves to be treated right. Sam won't be the first or last woman to see how much of a great guy he is. She showers him with compliments, with Miles clearly enjoying it. They've made it to the public library. The beet store will have to wait till later. Miles decided to bring up an awkward topic, them hooking up. They've never done it, much to his surprise. Despite the amount of drunken nights and their closeness for the past 15 years, the most they did was kiss once. Becca recalls the memory with great fondness. They kissed during a party shortly before Miles threw up from being blackout drunk. He confesses that he wasn't blacked out at the time. He remembers the kiss pretty clearly. In fact, he had a crush on her at the time. She asks him why he never said anything, and he claims he was nervous. He never dealt with a situationship where he had to try and steer a long-term friendship into a romantic territory before. She's glad he's over his crush now, though. She listens to him talk about his previous crush on her with fondness in her eyes. She confesses that she also had a crush on him back then, from the day she met until the day she started dating Jeremy. They're shocked that neither of them knew. As they sit there in front of the library doors, she says their timing just wasn't right. He starts talking about the library's history and who it's named after. She says she wants a building named after her too. They're inside the building now, making their ways through the rows of books and desks inhabited by knowledge-hungry readers. They have their share of silent fun, looking at each other through the gaps between the books and searching for interesting pages. They make their way out, and under the grand chandelier, the two spin in place. They don't orbit around someone or something. Their independence is more important. Now back outside, Becca compliments the light posts and their individuality. She reminds him that he still needs to find his ugliest thing. They come across a street performer and stand by to watch his act. The man comes up to them with his briefcase, asking for the time. He tells them he's late and strolls off. It's a bit odd, but it's nothing that they're not used to amidst Los Angeles' fair share of strangeness. With nothing better to do, they decide to follow him. The path leads to a street filled with homeless people. Their tents and meager possessions fill the sidewalk that people are lined up on. Miles decides that the sad truth of homelessness is the ugliest thing in Los Angeles. The sight has clearly dampened their moods, and as they continue their walk, they talk about it. Their commitment to talking about whatever is disturbing them is going strong. Becca complains about her feet hurting, and Miles jokingly picks her up for a moment. They have no clue where they're going now, but they don't really care. It's about the journey, not the destination, he says. They talk about their parents and what it would be like if they moved back in with them. Peaceful music plays as they enter a grand building. They probably have a few hours until the sun sets, but they're no doubt already feeling exhausted from their walk. They're definitely hungry, though, and they stop at a street market to fill their stomachs. Miles continues his previous complaint about people moving to Los Angeles and sullying the culture there. Becca says he's no different than the people he's critiquing. Whatever differences he perceives between him and his supposed enemies are imaginary or insignificant. It's probably just a safe and easy way to complain about his frustrations. Sometime during their conversation, the two start a food fight. Quick to come up with a way to defend herself, Becca quickly jogs away from the table. They find themselves at an arcade, getting a quick game of air hockey and just dance in. Their next stop is a giant mural that they dance in front of. Then, they're watching a dance performance. They don't leave the souvenir shops unattended, dressing in sombreros and ponchos and getting their pictures taken. Satisfied with their share of fun and spontaneous activities for now, they start talking about music. As they list songs they love, we find that their tastes are nearly identical, as expected of people who have been best friends for 15 years. Now that he found his ugliest thing in Los Angeles, he asks her when she'll announce her most beautiful thing. She tells him that she found it an hour ago. She just kept quiet about it because there was no rule that said she had to say it. He presses her to share it, and she says what it was. An old lady sitting in the middle of the sidewalk, knitting herself a scarf. When he tells her to continue, she tells him his attitude is exactly why she didn't want to share it at the moment. There's nothing more to the story. The old lady was just sitting there, doing her thing. It was beautiful because it was peaceful, because the old lady was doing something for herself. She wasn't waiting for someone or something, instead prioritizing her needs and relaxation. Now at a bar, they bring up their parents again. Miles reiterates his previous sentiment about his folks. He hopes that one day, he'll have what they have. A simple but true shared love. They talk about how we never know if or when things will work out. We simply lie to ourselves and try to persevere through tough times, hoping that we'll end up on the other side with a brighter heart. Their situation dawns on them there. They're both at a crossroads. They have to make important decisions that will determine the rest of their lives. And what's a better time to make important decisions than after chugging some beer? The bar cheers them on as they all participate. Even the bartender joins in. It's still broad daylight when they make it out of the dark bar, and their level of intoxication is slightly concerning. Becca tries to do a toe tap, and Miles one-ups her by attempting to jump over a parking meter. As expected, he doesn't break any records, but he does end up in a great deal of pain. They're at an art walk now, and it's Miles' first time at one. He brings up New York and how she'd be having art exhibitions every day if she went. He tells her she could be part of something grand and important here. She doesn't have to move to another city for it, but she's still undecided. Miles hands her an earphone and puts on a cheerful tune, and the two skip the rest of their way to an art gallery. They're looking at a painting of cutlery when a man walks up to Becca. They're clearly acquainted, and it doesn't take long to realize the man is Jeremy. Miles compliments his work after Becca and Jeremy share some quick words. Miles quickly leaves, using the excuse of having to go to the bathroom and wanting to get more drinks. It doesn't take long for Jeremy to start flirting with Becca, and Miles watches the scene with obvious frustration. Somewhere along the way, he decides he can't stand the sight anymore. He leaves the art gallery and sits at the curb outside of the graffitied building, listening to music once again. Becca finds him outside, and she's cheerful as ever. She tells him she's gonna get coffee with Jeremy tomorrow. It was her first time seeing his art, and she's very impressed, much to Miles' dismay. His sour mood from the morning has returned, and he's now spending the walk complaining about the architecture of the church across the road. Despite his clear dislike for it, they make their way inside, and the interior is more gorgeous than he's willing to give it credit for. They start talking about religion. Becca says it doesn't matter what appearance it takes on, as long as its core is beautiful and peaceful. She wants to get something from the gift shop, and Miles critiques the money grab attempt that the church is making. She's having none of his current attitude. She stops in her tracks and calls him out for it, rightfully so. But he doesn't stop on his hateful rant. She tells him he's being insensitive and close-minded, but he continues on with his brigade of insults. She says it's not about religion, it's about respect. You have to respect people's beliefs and opinions. Miles, however, won't back down from his stance against major religious institutions. In fact, he takes it up a notch and says no one in New York will pay for her art if she can't see through the lies of religious institutions. As he tells her to rethink her path, she stands there, teary-eyed, taking in his insults. But she doesn't let him go without a piece of her mind. She tells him how much of a wreck his life is. His fiancée was cheating on him, he hates his job, which he might not have in a couple of months, and he doesn't know how to deal with his issues. All he can do is go to his mother and rely on her for support. But unlike him, she has no mother to support her. Yet, she doesn't complain half as much about her life as much as he complains about his. In fact, she doesn't complain at all. She's busy taking care of her dad, and her life, and right now, him. She has no time to take care of herself. And yes, she might fail if she goes to New York, but at least she has the courage to try. Miles cannot relate. Miles is not a fan of her observations. He says he didn't ask for her company, it was pushed on him. Upon him uttering those words, Becca immediately tries to redeem the situation. She's clearly someone who believes in forgiveness and reconciliation. They walk back to Miles' palace in silence, despite Becca's attempt at having a serious conversation about what just happened. The next time Miles speaks to Becca, it's to ask for his phone. She refuses his request, and to his disbelief, throws his phone into the lake. He throws her phone into the lake too. They're left standing there, phoneless, both feeling terrible for what they've said and what they've done. He didn't want to burden her with his problems, he reminds her. Meanwhile, Sam makes another attempt at a voice message. She tells him that when she cheated, she got drunk at a bar and made out with a stranger. It didn't go any further than that. Through tears, she apologizes and says she knows they can work it out. Of course, the words won't reach Miles. Him and Becca sit on a bench in front of the lake, deep in thought. The sun is beginning to set. They have a few hours before they part ways, possibly forever. Becca breaks the silence with a confession. She says her mom was never religious, but in her last months, she started talking to a priest. She never told anyone this, but at her weakest, in pain from chemotherapy, her mother's only solace and source of hope was God. That's why she's grateful for religion. Miles immediately apologizes for his previous rant. It was clearly wrong. He also confesses something important. Sam wanted to get married in that very church. It seems like the fight broke out because it centered around each of their most sensitive sore spots. Their hearts are lighter now that they've both apologized. It's nighttime as they make their way back, finally going home this time. Becca gets distracted by a house party on their way, and Miles reluctantly goes inside with her. Smiles on their faces, they dance to the live band, praising the musicians and enjoying the vibes. She recognizes someone from across the lawn, and the two make their way to a man. It's the guy from the bus. He quickly apologizes for his earlier demeanor. The party atmosphere has clearly done his personality some good. Becca and Miles groove to a few more songs, letting loose and having fun. The two split up halfway through, but they're quickly joined by interested strangers. If Becca is upset that Miles is dancing so closely with another woman, she doesn't let it show, apart from some slight annoyance on her face. Miles has hit it off with the woman he was dancing with. Her name is Sarah, and she's led Miles away from the party to have a private chat. Becca quickly finds her, and Sarah scurries away before things can get awkward. Miles asks Becca how she knows if she really knows someone, and she thinks it's intuitive. He's not satisfied with that answer, so she sets up a test. She closes her eyes and asks him what color they are. Despite knowing her for 15 years, it takes him some time to come up with an answer. When he does answer, it's romantic, and Becca almost swoons. He tells her it's a trick question since her eyes change with the light. Sarah is back with some beers, joined by a guy who goes off on a weird philosophical tangent. They hear some commotion near the fence, and Sarah tells them they're bikers who make rounds around Los Angeles. The two are clearly not ready to end their streak of adventure, and agree to join them on their bike excursion. Now cruising through the city on flashy bikes, the wind blowing through the hair and clothes, Becca and Miles are the picture of happiness and freedom. They diverge from the crowd, now biking across the Hollywood Boulevard Walk of Fame. Spent from walking and biking, they sit down to rest in front of the urban light installation. Becca thanks him for the day, and Miles tells her how unexpected today was. He asks her if they'll have to get back to their real life after this, and she tells him they have a few moments left. He encourages her to go to New York, and she's overjoyed to hear such definitive support from him. She asks him what he'll do. At that moment, he decides to swing through the lampposts. After one last final swing, the two find themselves in front of each other. Overwhelmed with the great day behind them and the unsure future ahead, the pair lean into a sweet kiss. It's innocent and caring, and when they break apart, the remainder of their adoration for each other spills out in the form of a loving embrace. She asks him what he's going to do again. He tells her he'll meet up with Sam again and talk about their situation. He'll call off the family dinner too. It's none of anyone but his and Sam's business. Becca is happy he's finally taken a decision. Not a hint of resentment or jealousy in her voice. To his surprise, she pulls out his phone from her pocket. Apparently, she threw her spare mobile into the lake. It dawns on him that he threw her phone in the lake, but she's not mad about it. She tells him about Sam's voicemail and how they're even now. Sam kissed a stranger, and Miles kissed her. All is right in the world, sort of. At least for now.